The Galactic Preservation Institute had a problem. Well, technically they had 17 problems, but 16 of them had already eaten their way through 3 security divisions and a buffet table. The 17th problem was standing in Director Klex's office, holding what appeared to be a resume printed on actual paper, like some kind of primitive cave dweller. "So you're the human intern," Director Klex said, his forearms gesturing dismissively while his mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. The Zephyrian had run the Institute for over 200 years, which was impressive considering most directors lasted about 6 months before something with too many teeth turned them into a light snack. Jake Murphy, fresh out of college with a degree in xenobiology and approximately 0 useful life experience, nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, sir, Jake Murphy, reporting for duty. I've studied all 17 of your current preservation cases, and I have some ideas about the Vorthak situation." Klex's eye stalks swiveled to regard this presumptuous mammal. Ideas about the Vorthaks. He pronounced it like Jake had just suggested they solve interstellar travel by flapping their arms really hard. "Young human, do you have any concept of what a Vorthak actually is?" Jake opened his mouth to answer, but Klex was already warming up to his favorite lecture. The director's species were natural-born educators, which was unfortunate because they were also natural-born condescenders. "The Vorthak," Klex began, pulling up a holographic display that made Jake's primitive paper resume look even more pathetic, "are the apex predators of the Andromeda spiral. 8 feet tall at maturity, retractable plasma claws, telepathic hunting instincts, and a bite force that can crack titanium. They hunt in packs, communicate through quantum-leaked brainwaves, and their cubs reach adolescence by consuming their own parents." The hologram showed a creature that looked like someone had crossbred a saber-toothed tiger with a nightmare and then given it a PhD in murder. Jake watched as the display demonstrated the Vorthok's impressive array of natural weaponry, including claws that could extend like switchblades and eyes that glowed with what the readout helpfully labeled as homicidal intent. "Their homeworld was consumed by a supernova last year," Klex continued, clearly enjoying Jake's pale expression. "We managed to save exactly 1 pregnant female before the system went dark. She died in childbirth, leaving us with 6 cubs that represent the last hope for their species' survival." "6 cubs," Jake repeated, trying to sound professional while mentally calculating how many pieces 6 telepathic murder machines could turn him into. "And they're currently housed in Sub-basement level 9, behind 17 layers of quantum shielding, gravitic dampeners, and a force field that could stop a planetary invasion." Klex's mandibles clicked again. "The cubs are approximately 6 months old, which in Vorthak development means they've already achieved the hunting prowess of a fully grown Earth shark, but with opposable thumbs and the strategic thinking of a military tactician." Jake nodded slowly. "Right. And the preservation issue is?" "The preservation issue," Klex said, "is that every single attempt to establish a positive relationship with these cubs has resulted in catastrophic failure. The crystalline collective tried to engage their intellectual development with advanced puzzles. The cubs ate the crystals and used the fragments to pick locks. The meditation masters of Zendar attempted to calm their aggressive instincts through spiritual enlightenment. The cubs used the masters as stress balls until they achieved a transcendent state of unconsciousness." The hologram shifted to show what looked like a war zone. Twisted metal, scorch marks, and what appeared to be bite marks in solid steel decorated a series of containment rooms. "Last week, the Iron Brigade constructed an escape-proof enclosure using military-grade materials and AI-controlled security systems." Klex paused dramatically. "The cubs broke out in 12 minutes and 17 seconds. They're currently using the wreckage as jungle gym equipment." Jake studied the destruction with the kind of professional interest that suggested he either had a death wish or knew something Klex didn't. "Have you considered that maybe you're approaching this from the wrong angle?" The director's eye stalks swiveled to focus on Jake with laser precision. "Wrong angle. Please enlighten me with your vast experience in apex predator management. I'm sure your species' expertise in keeping small mammals as companions will prove invaluable in dealing with telepathic killing machines." "Well," Jake said, completely missing the sarcasm, "I do have a cat." The silence that followed was so profound that Jake could actually hear the hum of the Institute's quantum processors. Director Klex's forearms froze mid-gesture. His mandibles stopped clicking, and even his eye stalks seemed to droop slightly. "You have a cat," Klex repeated flatly. "Her name is Whiskers. She's very difficult." And that was the moment Director Klex realized he might have made a terrible mistake in accepting Earth's application to join the Galactic Preservation Initiative. But the paperwork was already filed, the human was already here, and the Vorthak cubs were already eating their way through the monthly supply budget. What could possibly go wrong? Director Klex decided that the best way to discourage this delusional human was to give him a comprehensive tour of exactly how spectacularly every other species had failed. It was like showing someone a graveyard before asking them to dig their own grave, but with more educational value. "Follow me," Klex announced, his forearms gesturing toward the elevator. "I'm going to show you our Hall of Failures. Consider it a learning experience in the art of humility." The elevator descended through 17 levels of increasingly ominous security checkpoints. Jake noticed that each level seemed to require more weapon scans, DNA verification, and what appeared to be last will and testament validation. By level 12, they were asking him to designate next of kin. "Here we are," Klex said cheerfully, as they emerged into a corridor lined with display cases. Each case contained the remnants of a failed attempt to tame the Vorthak cubs, along with a placard describing the disaster in clinical detail. The first display case contained what looked like a pile of rainbow-colored gravel. "The crystalline collective of Xerion Prime," Klex began with the enthusiasm of a tour guide at a museum of disasters. "They're a hive mind species with collective intelligence quotients that make your Einstein look like a particularly slow houseplant. Their approach was purely intellectual, based on advanced mathematical puzzles and logic games designed to stimulate cognitive development." Jake examined the sparkling debris. "What happened?" "The cubs ate the crystals within the first hour, then spent the next 6 hours using the crystalline fragments to pick every lock in the facility. Apparently, advanced mathematics tastes like chicken to a Vorthak. Who knew?" They moved to the next case, which contained what appeared to be deflated balloon animals made of pure light. "The meditation masters of Zendar," Klex continued, his mandibles clicking with barely suppressed glee. "They exist as pure energy beings focused on achieving perfect spiritual harmony. Their plan was to calm the cubs' aggressive instincts through telepathic meditation and guided relaxation techniques." "Let me guess," Jake said, studying the sad, deflated energy forms. "It didn't work." "Oh, it worked perfectly. The cubs were extremely relaxed. So relaxed, in fact, that they decided the floating energy beings made excellent chew toys. The Zendar achieved a transcendent state of unconsciousness that lasted for 3 weeks. They're still in therapy." The third display case looked like someone had fed a military base through a blender, then put it back together wrong. Twisted metal beams formed impossible geometric shapes, and what appeared to be advanced weaponry had been bent into decorative sculptures. "The Iron Brigade of Nexus 7, Klex said with obvious relish. "Military precision incarnate. They built an escape-proof enclosure using their most advanced containment technology. Motion sensors, laser grids, quantum locks, and AI-controlled security drones. The entire system was designed by their top military engineers and powered by a small star." Jake whistled softly at the level of destruction. "How long did it last?" 12 minutes and 17 seconds. The cubs treated it like the galaxy's most expensive puzzle box. They solved it by eating through the quantum locks, using the laser grids as dental floss, and turning the security drones into flying toys. The AI controlling the system actually filed for early retirement. As they continued down the corridor, Jake noticed a pattern emerging. Each species had approached the problem from their own perspective, using their greatest strengths. The intellectual species tried intellectual solutions. The spiritual species tried spiritual solutions. The military species tried military solutions. "What about the empathic union?" Jake asked, pointing to a display case filled with what looked like tissues and sympathy cards. "Ah, yes. The empaths." Klex's eye stalks drooped slightly. "They attempted to form emotional connections with the cubs through shared feelings and mutual understanding. The cubs were very understanding. They understood exactly how terrified the empaths were and found it absolutely delicious. Apparently, fear is a Vorthak delicacy." Jake pulled out his tablet and started taking notes, which seemed to amuse Klex greatly. "Making your own plan, young human, based on your vast experience with household pets?" "Something like that," Jake said absently, scrolling through the failure reports. Each attempt had cost millions of credits, dozens of injuries, and in several cases, complete existential crises among the participating species. "The hive mind collective tried to outthink them," Jake muttered, more to himself than to Klex. The energy beings tried to out-Zin them, the military tried to out-force them, the empaths tried to out-feel them. Exactly. Kleck's mandibles clicked triumphantly. Each species brought their greatest strength to bear against an opponent that simply doesn't play by the same rules. The Vorthax are apex predators, young human. They don't respond to logic, meditation, force, or emotion. They respond to hunger, territory, and the irresistible urge to turn everything into a chew toy. Jake looked up from his tablet with a thoughtful expression. Has anyone tried just playing with them? The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Director Klex's forearms slowly lowered to his sides. His eye stalks focused on Jake with the intensity of someone trying to determine if they were looking at genius or insanity. Playing, Klex repeated slowly, with apex predators. Well, they're babies, Jake pointed out reasonably. Even apex predator babies probably want to have fun, right? Director Klex stared at Jake for a full 30 seconds, his mandibles working silently, as if he were trying to process a concept so alien it might break his brain. Finally, he managed to speak. You want to play with the galaxy's most dangerous predators. I want to try a different approach, Jake corrected. Can I see them first? 20 minutes later, they stood in the observation deck overlooking containment level 9. Through 6 inches of transparent aluminum, Jake got his first look at the infamous Vorthak cubs. They were not what he'd expected. Sure, they were the size of small ponies with retractable claws that could cut through steel, and yes, their eyes did glow with what the readout cheerfully labeled as homicidal intent, but mostly, they looked bored out of their minds. The cubs were sprawled around their sterile containment chamber like teenagers forced to sit through a tax law seminar. One was idly shredding a piece of advanced composite material that had probably cost more than Jake's college tuition. Another was staring at the wall with the kind of existential despair usually reserved for philosophy majors. A third was methodically testing the structural integrity of every surface by gnawing on it. Amy looked depressed, Jake observed. They look contained, Klex corrected, which is more than any other species has managed to achieve. Jake pulled out his tablet and started making notes again. How long have they been in this environment? 6 months, since they were born. 6 months in a sterile box with nothing to do except eat regulation nutrition paste and destroy expensive equipment. Jake looked up from his tablet. Yeah, I'd be homicidal too. Klex's eye stalks swiveled to focus on Jake. Are you suggesting that the galaxy's most advanced containment facility is somehow inadequate? I'm suggesting that maybe the problem isn't containment. Maybe the problem is entertainment. Entertainment, Klex repeated, the same way someone might say explosive diarrhea. Look, can I try something? What's the worst that could happen? Klex gestured at the Hall of Failures they'd just walked through. Complete and total disaster resulting in massive property damage, psychological trauma, and possible interdimensional rifts in the space-time continuum. Okay, but aside from that? 2 hours later, Jake returned to containment level 9 carrying what appeared to be a collection of garbage. Director Klex followed at a safe distance, along with a growing crowd of alien scientists, security personnel, and what Jake was pretty sure were insurance adjusters. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted non-binary energy beings, Jake announced to the assembled crowd, I present humanity's most advanced containment technology. He held up a cardboard box. The silence was deafening. Then someone in the crowd started laughing. Then someone else. Within seconds, the entire observation deck was filled with the sounds of 17 different species, expressing amusement in ways that ranged from musical chiming to what sounded like a garbage disposal having an emotional breakdown. A box, wheezed Dr. Tentrix, the station's lead xenobiologist, wiping tears from her compound eyes. He brought a box. Not just any box, Jake said with complete sincerity. This is a premium Earth-manufactured cardboard container featuring advanced corrugated construction and optimal structural integrity for maximum entertainment value. Director Klex leaned over to the security chief. Is he having some kind of mental breakdown? Do humans do that? I also brought some string, Jake continued, holding up what was clearly just regular string, and various Earth-based entertainment accessories. The entertainment accessories appeared to be a collection of bottle caps, crumpled paper balls, and what looked like a toilet paper tube. The assembled crowd of galactic intellectuals stared at this primitive technology with the kind of fascination usually reserved for archaeological discoveries. This is your plan? Klex asked. Arts and crafts? This is my plan, Jake confirmed. Can someone open the containment field? Absolutely not, Klex said immediately. "Those cubs will tear you into component atoms." "We'll try," Jake agreed cheerfully. "But first, they're going to be really curious about this box." The argument that followed involved 17 different languages, 3 formal challenges to duels, and at least one attempt to have Jake declared mentally incompetent by galactic health standards. But eventually, Jake's combination of stubborn enthusiasm and complete disregard for his own mortality wore them down. "Fine," Klex announced, "but when you become a light snack, I'm putting death by cardboard on your official record." "Fair enough," Jake said, stepping into the containment chamber's entrance vestibule. "Oh, one more thing. Nobody else comes in, no matter what happens. This only works if they don't feel threatened." "Threatened?" Klexar's mandibles clicked frantically. "You're the one who should feel threatened. They're apex predators." "Yeah, but I'm not trying to contain them, control them, or fix them," Jake said, hefting his cardboard box. "I'm just trying to have some fun." The containment field dropped with a soft hum, and Jake walked into the chamber where 6 telepathic killing machines were waiting for him. The cubs immediately went alert, their glowing eyes focusing on this new intruder who dared to enter their domain. Jake sat down cross-legged in the middle of the room, placed the cardboard box in front of him, and completely ignored the 6 apex predators who were now stalking toward him with the focused intensity of professional assassins. Instead, he started playing with the box. "Oh, wow," he said to himself, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is the most interesting box ever. I wonder what's inside it." He lifted one flap and peered into the empty interior with the kind of fascination usually reserved for discovering new galaxies. The cubs stopped mid-stalk, their heads tilting slightly. "Nothing in here," Jake announced, then closed the flap and immediately opened it again. "Wait, let me check again." From the observation deck, Director Klex watched in horror as the human appeared to be having a conversation with an empty cardboard box, while ignoring the fact that he was surrounded by creatures that could disassemble him at the molecular level. But the cubs weren't disassembling anyone. They were watching. Their glowing eyes tracked Jake's every movement as he continued his enthusiastic exploration of basic cardboard physics. "You know what this box needs?" Jake said to nobody in particular, pulling out the toilet paper tube. "A periscope." And that's when something unprecedented happened in the history of Vorthak containment. One of the cubs took a step closer. The observation deck fell silent. Not the polite silence of a lecture hall or the nervous silence before an execution. This was the kind of absolute silence that occurs when the fundamental laws of the universe appeared to be taking a coffee break. Jake, completely oblivious to the fact that he had just achieved the impossible, continued his enthusiastic exploration of cardboard technology. He poked the toilet paper tube through one side of the box, creating what he announced to the world was the galaxy's first cardboard periscope. "Oh man, the structural integrity on this thing's amazing," he said, running his fingers along the corrugated edges. "And look at this craftsmanship. You can tell this box was made by professionals." The first cub, the one that had taken a step closer, tilted its massive head to the side. Its glowing eyes, which had been radiating pure homicidal intent for 6 months, now held something that the watching scientists couldn't immediately identify. Curiosity. "Is he talking to the box?" whispered Dr. Tentrix. "I think he's complimenting its manufacturing quality," whispered back Chief Medical Officer Blundrix. Director Klex said nothing. His forearms hung limp at his sides as he watched the human engage in what appeared to be the galaxy's most one-sided conversation with a piece of folded cardboard. Jake lifted the box and peered through his improvised periscope. "Perfect visibility. This is definitely premium Earth technology right here." He set the box down and looked directly at the nearest cub. "What do you think, buddy? Pretty impressive, right?" The cub blinked. Its telepathic death thoughts, which had been broadcasting variations of kill, maim, destroy for months, went completely quiet. Then it took another step forward. "Jake." Klex's voice crackled through the intercom, tight with panic. "Jake, you need to back away slowly. Don't make any sudden movements." "Why?" Jake asked, genuinely confused. "We're just getting to the good part." He reached into his collection of advanced Earth accessories and pulled out a crumpled ball of paper. With the kind of casual indifference that suggested he wasn't currently sharing space with 6 telepathic killing machines, he tossed the paper ball into the box. "Perfect fit," he announced. "This box has excellent storage capacity." The second cub crept forward, its massive paws silent on the chamber floor. Then the third. Within minutes, Jake was surrounded by 6 apex predators, all staring at him with the focused intensity they usually reserved for dismembering their enemies. But nobody was getting dismembered. Instead, Jake was providing running commentary on the wonders of basic cardboard construction. "Now, the really amazing thing about this box," he said, "is that it's both a container and a fort. Watch this." He crawled inside the box. The collective gasp from the observation deck was audible even through 6 inches of transparent aluminum. Director Klex's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like a percussion section having a seizure. "He's trapped," someone whispered. "They've got him cornered." But Jake's voice emerged from inside the box, muffled but enthusiastic. "Oh wow, this is even better from the inside. It's like my own personal fortress. I could live in here." One of the cubs approached the box and sniffed at it cautiously. Jake's head popped up through the open top, like the galaxy's most cheerful jack-in-the-box. "Hi there," he said to the cub, whose face was now approximately 6 inches from his own. "Pretty cool box, huh? Want to try it?" The cub stared at Jake for a long moment. Its telepathic emanations, which the monitoring equipment had been tracking for months, showed something that shouldn't have been possible. The apex predator was thinking about the box. Not thinking about eating Jake or destroying the box or using Jake's intestines to redecorate the chamber. It was actually considering the box as an object of interest. Jake climbed out of the box and gestured toward it, like a real estate agent showing off a prime property. "All yours if you want to check it out. I've got plenty more where this came from." The cub approached the box slowly, sniffed it thoroughly, then delicately placed one massive paw inside. The box crinkled softly under the weight, making a sound that seemed to fascinate the creature. It placed its other front paw inside, then carefully maneuvered its hindquarters until it was sitting in the box like the galaxy's most dangerous house cat. "Perfect fit," Jake said approvingly. "You've got excellent box instincts." From the observation deck, the assembled scientists watched in stunned silence as the most feared predator in the galaxy settled into a cardboard box with an expression of what could only be described as contentment. "This is impossible," breathed Dr. Tentrix. "Vorthax don't experience contentment. They experience hunger and rage. That's it." "Maybe they just never found the right box," Jake suggested, pulling out his string. "Now who wants to learn about advanced string technology?" The word advanced was clearly doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, but the cubs didn't seem to mind. Jake tied one end of the string to the toilet paper tube and began dragging it across the floor. The sound of cardboard scraping against metal was apparently the most fascinating thing 6 telepathic predators had ever encountered. Within minutes, Jake had all 6 cubs engaged in what could only be described as the galaxy's most dangerous game of keep-away. They chased the toilet paper tube, pounced on the string, and took turns sitting in the box while Jake provided enthusiastic commentary on their technique. "Excellent pouncing form," he told one cub that had just executed a perfect ambush on the paper tube. "Really good use of your natural hunting instincts. And you," he said to another cub that was systematically shredding a piece of string, "you've got great problem-solving skills. Very methodical approach." Director Klex watched this impossible scene unfold with the expression of someone whose fundamental understanding of reality was being systematically dismantled by a human with arts and crafts supplies. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "They're apex predators. They're supposed to be killing him, not whatever this is." "I think it's called playing," Chief Medical Officer Blundrix said softly. "I've read about it in the xenological literature. Some species engage in non-productive activities purely for enjoyment." "Playing," Klex repeated, as if the word tasted strange in his mouth, "with cardboard." In the chamber below, Jake had moved on to advanced box engineering. He was helping the cubs construct what appeared to be a cardboard fortress using multiple boxes he'd apparently smuggled in. The cubs worked with the focused intensity they usually reserved for tactical combat. But instead of planning ambushes and coordinated attacks, they were debating architectural decisions through telepathic communication. "I think we need more structural support here," Jake was saying, pointing to a junction between 2 boxes, "and maybe a secret tunnel system. Every good fort needs secret tunnels." The cubs enthusiastically agreed, their telepathic emanations now broadcasting what the monitoring equipment could only classify as engineering enthusiasm. Director Klex realized he was witnessing something that would rewrite xenological textbooks across the galaxy. The most dangerous predators known to science were engaged in collaborative construction projects with a human who had apparently solved their containment problem using garbage and pure enthusiasm. "How?" Klex whispered to himself. "How is this possible?" Jake, overhearing through the intercom, looked up from where he was helping a cub optimize the aerodynamics of a paper airplane made from regulation forms. "Easy," he said with a grin. "I stopped trying to contain them and started trying to entertain them. Turns out apex predator babies are still babies. They just want to play with stuff and have someone pay attention to them. And in that moment, Director Klex realized that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their intelligence, their technology, or their military prowess. It was their complete inability to take anything seriously. 3 hours later, Director Klex found himself in the unprecedented position of having to explain to the Galactic Council why the Institute's most dangerous containment problem had been solved by a human with office supplies and an apparent death wish. The Cubs were now living in what could only be described as a cardboard metropolis. They had constructed towers, tunnels, bridges, and what appeared to be a primitive municipal government building where they held daily meetings to discuss zoning regulations for their expanding cardboard empire. Jake sat in the middle of it all like some kind of benevolent cardboard deity, dispensing wisdom about structural engineering and conflict resolution while the Cubs brought him their architectural disputes for mediation. "I need to understand," Klex said, his forearms gesticulating wildly as he paced the observation deck. "I need to understand how your primitive technology accomplished what the galaxy's most advanced civilizations could not." Jake looked up from where he was helping two Cubs resolve a territorial dispute over prime real estate in the cardboard district. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. The materials, the methodology, the science behind your containment system. The Council is offering to purchase your technology for 50 million galactic credits." 50 million, Jake repeated thoughtfully, "for cardboard boxes." "Or whatever advanced Earth technology you're using," Klex corrected. "Don't try to pretend those are simple containers. Our scientists have been analyzing the acoustic resonance patterns, and the complexity is staggering." Jake blinked. "Acoustic resonance patterns?" "The sound frequencies generated by the corrugated structure create a multi-layered harmonic environment that apparently triggers deep-seated psychological responses in Vorthak neural pathways." Klex was reading from a tablet that was scrolling through what appeared to be several hundred pages of technical analysis. "Our xenopsychology team believes you've somehow weaponized the fundamental frequency of corrugated cardboard to induce a state of cooperative compliance." "Right," Jake said slowly. "Or maybe they just like the way it sounds when they scratch it." "Scratch it?" Klex's eye stalk swiveled toward him. "You mean the rhythmic claw-to-substrate interaction patterns?" "Yes, our behavioral analysts noted those as well. The texture provides optimal tactile feedback for their retractable claw systems, creating a positive reinforcement loop that encourages continued engagement." Jake watched one of the Cubs contentedly shredding a piece of cardboard into decorative strips. "Yeah, that's basically what I said." "And the string," Klex continued, consulting his tablet again. "Our materials science division is fascinated by its properties. The tensile strength, the flexibility, the way it moves in three-dimensional space. They want to know how you determined the optimal thickness for maximum predator engagement." "I grabbed whatever string was in the supply closet." "Supply closet," Klex repeated, making notes. "Is that some kind of advanced Earth storage facility where you conduct materials testing?" "It's a closet, with supplies in it." Director Klex stared at Jake for a long moment, then looked back at his tablet, then at Jake again. "You're telling me that your revolutionary containment technology consists of randomly selected office supplies?" "Pretty much." "And your methodology was?" "I played with them." "Played with them," Klex said, his mandibles clicking slowly, "using cardboard and string. And toilet paper tubes. Don't forget the toilet paper tubes, they're very important for the periscope functionality." By this point, word had spread throughout the galaxy about the miracle at the Galactic Preservation Institute. Representatives from dozens of species had arrived to witness the impossible sight of cooperative Vorthox, and more importantly, to negotiate for access to humanity's revolutionary box technology. The Crystalline Collective offered to trade their entire database of mathematical theorems for a single cardboard box. The Zendar Masters wanted to study the transcendent simplicity of Jake's approach. The Iron Brigade requested detailed schematics for something they were calling Earth Strategic Engagement Containers. Jake found himself in the unusual position of being the galaxy's leading expert on cardboard physics and string dynamics. He set up a small consulting business in the Institute's conference room, where he explained the complex science of if it fits, I sits, to species whose civilizations had mastered faster than light travel but had apparently never encountered the concept of a box. "The key," Jake explained to a delegation of quantum physicists who were taking detailed notes, "is understanding that the box isn't just a container. It's a fort, a hiding place, a throne, and a spaceship, all at the same time. The user's imagination determines its functionality." "Imagination?" repeated Dr. Quantrix, leader of the physics delegation. And how do we measure imagination units? You don't measure them, Jake said patiently. You just use them. Use them how? However you want. That's the point. The physicists huddled together for a whispered conference in mathematical equations before Dr. Quantrix raised another question. And the string technology? You drag it around and they chase it. But what's the optimal dragging pattern? Whatever feels fun. Fun? Dr. Quantrix said, like Jake had just introduced them to a new branch of theoretical physics. How do we calculate fun coefficient? Jake realized he was going to be here for a very long time. 6 months later, Jake's consulting business had expanded into a full-scale Earth technology export operation. He was selling premium Earth containment solutions to zoos, research facilities, and pet owners across 17 star systems. Each package contained a standard cardboard box, some string, and a detailed instruction manual that basically said, "Play with it." The boxes sold for 10,000 credits each, which Jake felt slightly guilty about until he realized that the buyers were getting exactly what they paid for. A cardboard box that made their dangerous pets happy. The Vorthak Cubs, meanwhile, had become the Institute's star attraction. They hosted daily tea parties in their cardboard palace, gave tours of their municipal government building, and had started what appeared to be the galaxy's first interspecies cultural exchange program. Other containment facilities were sending their most difficult specimens for what Jake's marketing materials called Earth-style behavioral modification therapy. Director Klex had been promoted 3 times and was now being consulted by the Galactic Council on revolutionary containment methodologies. His office was filled with awards, commendations, and what appeared to be a small shrine dedicated to the mysteries of corrugated cardboard. "I still don't understand how it works," Klex confessed during one of their weekly progress meetings. "That's because you're overthinking it," Jake said, watching one of the Cubs engineer a cardboard elevator system with the help of some visiting delegates from the Engineering Guild. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the right solution. But it's too simple. Advanced civilizations don't solve complex problems with office supplies." "Maybe that's the problem," Jake suggested. "Maybe being advanced isn't about having the most complicated solution. Maybe it's about recognizing when the simple solution is the right one." Klex considered this while watching a telepathic killing machine explain the finer points of cardboard architecture to a group of professors from the Galactic University's engineering department. "You know what the strangest part is?" Klex said finally. "What's that?" "They're not just contained anymore. They're happy." Jake smiled. "Yeah, that tends to happen when you stop trying to control someone and start trying to understand them." And as if to prove his point, one of the Cubs padded over to where Jake was sitting, dropped a carefully constructed cardboard crown on his head, and telepathically translated what the monitoring equipment translated as, "Best pack leader ever." Which, Jake thought, was probably the nicest performance review he'd ever received. 1 year after the Great Cardboard Revolution, Jake Murphy sat in his new office with a nameplate that read, Director of Interspecies Relations and Advanced Box Technology. His salary had increased by a factor of 100. He had his own research team, and he was being consulted by governments across 3 galactic sectors on matters of behavioral modification through recreational engagement. The Vorthak Cubs, now adolescents the size of small vehicles, had become the galaxy's most beloved success story. Their cardboard city had expanded into a full metropolitan area, complete with shopping districts, entertainment complexes, and what appeared to be the beginnings of a democratic political system. They hosted diplomatic receptions, cultural festivals, and had started their own reality show, called Keeping Up with the Vorthak. But the real revolution wasn't in the cardboard technology. It was in the fundamental shift in how the galaxy approached the concept of containment. "The quarterly reports are in," announced Jake's assistant, a floating energy being named Lumina, who had been assigned to help him manage his expanding consulting empire. "Zoo productivity is up 400%, containment breaches are down 97%, and customer satisfaction ratings are approaching theoretical maximums." "How's the new facility on Proxima 7 doing?" Jake asked, reviewing a holographic display showing their latest success story. "The Shadow Leviathans have completed construction of their blanket fort and have requested additional yarn for their ongoing macrame project. The facility director says it's the first time in recorded history that Shadow Leviathans have engaged in collaborative artistic endeavor." Jake nodded approvingly. The Shadow Leviathans had been another impossible case, interdimensional predators who fed on fear and despair. The Proxima 7 facility had been spending millions of credits on psychic dampening fields and terror suppression technology. Jake's solution had been to give them soft blankets and teach them to make friendship bracelets. Turns out interdimensional horror monsters really just wanted to be cozy and feel included. What about the quantum swarm incident on Beta Station? Resolved. The swarm has organized itself into a chess club and is currently engaged in a tournament with the station's crew. Apparently, hive minds are excellent at strategic thinking, but terrible at psychological warfare, because they can't bluff. Jake's success rate was approaching 100%, which was causing significant philosophical crises among the galaxy's leading xenopsychologists. The prevailing theory had been that advanced containment required advanced solutions. Jake kept proving that the most advanced solution was often just paying attention to what the creatures actually wanted. "Sir," Lumina chimed, her energy form pulsing with what Jake had learned to recognize as excitement, "we have a priority communication from the Galactic Council. They're requesting emergency consultation for a Code Black situation." Jake sighed. Code Black was reserved for extinction-level threats that posed immediate danger to entire star systems. What is it this time? "The Void Devourers of the Null Dimension have broken through the barriers between realities and are currently consuming everything in the Andromeda Spiral. All conventional containment efforts have failed, and they're requesting immediate deployment of your expertise." "Void Devourers," Jake repeated, already reaching for his emergency kit of cardboard boxes and craft supplies. "What do we know about them?" "Aliens exist outside normal space-time, consume matter and energy indiscriminately, and their presence causes reality itself to unravel. They are considered the ultimate apex predator, beings of pure destructive force, with no known weaknesses or desires beyond endless consumption." Jake paused in his packing. "No known desires beyond consumption?" "That's correct, sir. They appear to exist solely to devour everything in existence." Jake said thoughtfully, adding an extra roll of tape to his kit. "Has anyone ever asked them what they actually want?" "Sir, they're beings of pure destructive force. They don't want anything except to consume reality. That's what everyone said about the Vorthax, and the Shadow Leviathans, and the Quantum Swarm." Jake shouldered his bag of supplies. "Maybe they're just really, really hungry, and no one's ever offered them a proper snack." 3 hours later, Jake found himself on the bridge of the Galactic Defense Fleet's flagship, staring out at a sight that defied comprehension. The Void Devourers were massive tears in reality itself, consuming stars and planets with casual indifference while the combined military might of 17 civilizations bounced harmlessly off their non-corporeal forms. "The situation is critical," announced Admiral Zonthax, his crystalline form vibrating with stress frequencies. "They've consumed half the Andromeda Spiral in the past 6 hours. At this rate, they'll reach inhabited systems within days." "Have you tried talking to them?" Jake asked. "Talking to them?" The Admiral's harmonic resonance shifted to what Jake had learned was the crystalline equivalent of incredulous laughter. "Director Murphy, they are beings of pure entropy. They don't communicate. They consume." "Right, but have you actually tried?" 20 minutes later, Jake was sitting in a small shuttlecraft, drifting directly toward the largest of the Void Devourers while broadcasting on all frequencies the kind of message that would either save the galaxy or get him consumed by forces beyond mortal comprehension. "Hey there," he said into the comm system. "I'm Jake, I brought snacks." The Void Devourer paused in its consumption of a small moon. For the first time in recorded history, one of the universe's ultimate destructive forces actually stopped destroying things. "I know you guys have been eating a lot of stuff," Jake continued conversationally, "but I was wondering if you'd like to try something different. I've got some really interesting boxes here, and I thought maybe you'd like to play with them instead of, unraveling the fabric of reality." The response came not in words, but in a sensation that felt like the universe itself was curious. "Excellent," Jake said, reaching for his cardboard supplies. "Now, the first thing you need to understand about boxes is that they're not just containers. 6 months later, the Void Devourers had established the galaxy's first interdimensional art collective. They had discovered that unraveling reality was much more satisfying when you did it creatively, turning their destructive impulses into abstract sculptures that existed across 17 different planes of existence simultaneously. Jake's consulting business had expanded to include a new division: Existential Threat Management and Creative Redirection Services. His business cards now read Jake Murphy, Director of Making Friends with Things That Want to End the Universe. Director Klex, who had somehow become Jake's business partner despite his initial skepticism, found him in his office one evening, surrounded by thank-you notes from grateful civilizations and what appeared to be finger paintings made by interdimensional horrors. I have to ask, Kleck said, settling into a chair with his usual four-armed grace. How did you know? How did you know that the solution was always going to be so simple? Jake leaned back in his chair and smiled. I told you before, I have a cat. Yes, but what does that actually mean? It means I've spent years dealing with a small, independent predator who's perfectly capable of taking care of herself but still wants attention, entertainment, and someone to clean up her messes. Jake gestured toward a photo on his desk showing a small tabby cat sitting in a cardboard box. Whiskers taught me that the difference between a happy pet and a destructive pet isn't advanced technology or complex theories. It's understanding that even the most independent creatures want to feel like they matter to someone. Plex considered this profound wisdom while watching the latest reports scroll across Jake's monitor. The Vorthax had just been elected to the Galactic Council. The Shadow Leviathans were teaching art therapy classes. The Quantum Swarm had published a best-selling book on teamwork and communication. So the secret to managing the galaxy's most dangerous creatures, Kleck said slowly, is treating them like house pets. Not house pets, Jake corrected. Family members. There's a difference. What's the difference? Jake smiled as one of his Vorthak friends padded into the office, carefully balancing a cup of tea in his massive claws, and telepathically transmitting the daily gossip from the cardboard district. House pets live in your house, Jake said, accepting the tea with genuine gratitude. Family members make the house a home. And as the former galaxy's most feared apex predator settled down next to Jake's desk to work on his latest cardboard engineering project, Director Klex realized that humanity's greatest contribution to the universe wasn't their technology, their military might, or their scientific knowledge. It was their remarkable ability to look at something terrifying and ask, "But have you tried giving it a hug?" Which, as it turned out, was exactly what the universe needed.